The A52 is Samsung's latest mid-range device. It offers flagship features at an affordable price tag. One of the main things that comes to making a purchase decision of a brand new phone is the camera experience. So today, I'm going to be doing a full review on the Samsung Galaxy A52 camera shot on the Galaxy A52. Let's get right into this video. The star of the show is Samsung opting for a higher res 64 megapixel sensor instead of the 48 megapixel unit we saw last year. This one has a fairly bright aperture of f1.8 and an ultra-wide unit, which also has a higher res sensor at 12 megapixel, offering an aperture of f2.2 instead of an 8 megapixel sensor we saw last year. The same goes for the dedicated macro and depth sensors, which are 5 megapixels and offering an aperture of f2.4 instead of the popular 2 megapixel units that are found in most mid-range devices. On top of this, there's also a selfie camera with a 32 megapixel sensor and an f2.2 aperture, which is located at the top center of the screen in a hole punch cutout. Daylight photos on the main camera on the Galaxy A52 are pretty good. It has a wide dynamic range and colors feel lively without going too overboard. It provides great detail. The only real issue we see here is the slightly higher levels of noise and noise suppression traces left in some of the shots. The main 64 megapixel camera on the A52 is set at 16 megapixel by default, but that can be changed in the settings app. Daylight photos from the main camera on the Galaxy A52 are pretty good. It has a wide dynamic range and colors feel lively without going too overboard. It provides great detail, to be honest with you guys. The only real issue we see here is the slightly higher levels of noise and noise suppression traces left in some of the shots. The main 64 megapixel camera on the Galaxy A52 is set at 16 megapixel by default, but the 64 megapixel option can be triggered in the camera UI, and it does bring some extra detail, which is pretty impressive. The HDR greatly improves the image quality and provides great details in the pictures. Sadly, the A52 does struggle a little bit when it comes to capturing these stills. It's a bit slow processing images, but I would say it is well worth it. The Galaxy A52 has a zoom of up to 10x. In default, you can choose the option for 4x to 10x. The ultra-wide camera on the A52 captures a decent 12 megapixel still as well. The images are soft, especially around the edges of the frame, and Samsung didn't manage to get the images quite right and are inconsistent compared to the main camera. Colors seem less saturated and lively, and the overall palette is a bit colder. However, none of these are deal breakers, and the ultra-wide delivers solid performance for its class. The ultra-wide camera tends to struggle in low light and night conditions, leading to some blurry images, which was kind of sad, but I wasn't expecting much from a budget device. Speaking of the dedicated macro camera, the Galaxy A52 has a 5 megapixel sensor, which is quite impressive. It has a wide focus plane, and you don't have to get too close to the object for you to pull off some pretty nice macro pictures. Shots come out nice and detailed, generally a lot better than what you would get from an alternative 2 megapixel macro camera that's floating around on other mid-range devices. The A52 has a 32 megapixel selfie camera, which is just like the main camera. It has a quad barrier module, which means it natively produces 8 megapixel stills. The selfie camera has a narrow and wide mode. The wide mode shoots at 12 megapixels, whereas the narrow mode shoots at 8 megapixels. There is, however, an issue where you lose auto HDR scene and optimizer if you decide to shoot selfies in 32 megapixels. Overall, the selfie camera is solid with plenty of detail and decent noise performance. Skin tones can be inconsistent from time to time though. Portrait modes, also sometimes referred to as live focus in one of the Samsung devices, is good but not overly impressive. The bokeh effect itself is natural and convincing. The intensity slider is gradual and never really goes overboard. I expected much more from a 5 megapixel depth sensor, which the device failed to deliver. Selfie portrait mode is a feature as well. The results are surprisingly pleasant. The bokeh effect is nice, and it does a pretty good job at stitching the images. I did notice if you did maybe throw up the peace sign, it didn't do as good of a job at blurring the background around your fingers. Night mode brings great improvements where it restores a lot of details otherwise lost in normal mode. However, we do not see significant improvements in the shadows, and the dark areas remain quite dark. Night mode on the main camera produces 12 megapixel stills instead of 60 megapixels. You can also shoot at different zooms in night mode, which is a cool add-on feature. Night mode truly shines in helping the ultrawide camera out a lot more than the main camera, particularly helping it improve the shadows. Fun mode is a collaboration with Snapchat that puts some of the app's fun AR filters in the native Samsung camera app. It's just an extra trendy feature to have around. It works for both photos and videos. The filter selection consists of 7 basic lenses, one of which gets changed out daily, as well as an additional menu of 9 more effects that can get changed regularly. It requires an active network connection to work, which makes sense. Seeing how the filter selection is consistently changing, you can't really pick out your favorite filters since it's probably going to be different the next day. Pro mode is fairly in-depth, offering ISO from 50 to 400, shutter speeds up to 1/6000, white balance from 2300 kelvins to 1000 kelvins, as well as exposure compensation, and the ability to set different spots for the exposure and autofocus. Pro mode has separate menus which offer controls for contrast, highlights, shadows, saturation, and tints. These are usually found in editors. I actually found this pretty dope to have around. The Galaxy A52 is surprisingly competent video recorder. It has 4K at 30 FPS on the main camera, ultra-wide camera, and selfie camera. The ultra-wide lacks 60 FPS, which is to be expected, and that's about the only limitation it has on its technical aspects. Starting with the main camera, the detail is excellent, the processing is fairly natural, noise is non-existent too. The dynamic range is reasonably wide, the colors are spot on, the natural colors representation is also pretty good. For the ultra-wide, the video quality is actually pretty good, but noise is prominent, and the shadows have distracting noise patterns. Overall, pretty decent for an ultra-wide camera. You can capture videos up to 4K at every zoom level on the main camera. The 2x footage even looks decent, the detail is good, noise is well kept at bay, colors are solid, and dynamic range is wide. I have to say though, if you do go above 2x zoom, you are going to notice a noticeable decrease in quality. So I'm sure some of you guys are wondering, can I vlog with this camera? So this is dedicated for you guys. I'm gonna do a little bit of walking around so you can have an idea of exactly what you can expect if you're walking around. I'm gonna go to this fan here so you can judge the audio quality. So if you have some background noise, this is probably what it would sound like. And I'm gonna walk around and spin around. And if your background is overexposed, this is how it's going to look like, especially if you are an African American or someone who does have my skin tone. But aside from that, I am pretty impressed with this front-facing camera. It does record in 4K, so if you are looking to vlog on the Galaxy A52, it may work. It's probably not the best camera to vlog with, but it'll definitely get the job done. Stepping down to 1080p, on the primary camera, it introduces a surprising amount of extra noise, which is pretty weird. The ultra-wide camera is also noisy at 1080p. Video stabilization is available for both main and ultra-wide cameras on the Galaxy A52, which uses optical image stabilization, but only at 1080p resolution. It has 2 stabilization modes, normal and super steady. The normal mode does a good job at smoothing out jitters and handles panning very well. On the other hand, the super steady mode provides extra smoothness, but not major improvements from regular stabilization. There's also Pro Video mode, which has similar adjustments as a Pro Photo mode. Overall, Samsung has plenty of features added to the camera considering its price tag and still managing to maintain its camera quality. I personally like the Pro mode, which does not require you to download additional apps for you to fully utilize it. I am so excited for Samsung's mid-range cameras, and I'm looking forward to covering a lot more mid-range devices on this channel, so let me know down in the comment section what you guys want to see. Thank you so much for watching this camera review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, be sure to let me know down in the comment section. I'm actually considering doing a lot more camera reviews on budget to mid-range devices. So if that's something that you guys want to see on the channel, drop a like because that helps with ranking for these videos. And subscribe if you'd like to see more great content like this. And if you're not already following me on my social media platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, check me out at Victor's Fits. I post a lot of behind the scenes content for this channel and behind the scenes content for some of my production company stuff. So yeah, that's it. I can't think of anything else I want to talk about. I look forward to seeing all of you in the next one. Bye.